Well, welcome back, everybody. I think we got all these problems fixed. We're getting a really late start, but I appreciate every single one of you for being here with me, as I think we got it gone through everything and ready to host the show for you. As we start off today with 60 Minutes, who are part of the fake news networks who have been lying to the American people for as long as I've been alive. And when they go and they do all these hoaxes, every time they're caught, they do the same kind of blaming everybody else except them. As you have Scott Pelley, he's going to go on this insane rant, all because that 60 Minutes was caught lying to the American people. Their latest one was Kamala Harris, where 60 Minutes, they did an interview with her, but they were busted changing her answers to the questions, not just editing her answers down. And what's really funny about this is their own fault, as they were the ones who got caught because they put a trailer out where they had Kamala Harris answer questions. And then in that trailer, and then on a live show, they asked the same question, but it was a different answer given to the same one that was in the trailer. And I believe this was Mays that caught this and posted it to his profile. It blew up huge. And now fake news, they are facing, with the 60 Minutes, facing a $20 billion deceptive edits from Donald Trump's administration, as they should have to pay for what they've done, because this has a major effect on the U.S. elections. Right? If they're in the bag for one politician, that is a huge issue. And this isn't a free speech problem, right? The part of our First Amendment and part of the news and their protections is that they're supposed to be neutral, and they interview the candidates, they report the news, then you make up your own minds. However, with fake news, that is not what has been happening at all. What has been happening instead is they have decided they are going to be all in for the Democrats, for the DNC. And so then they will do everything in their power to try to make the Democrats look good, and they do everything in their power to also try to make Donald Trump look bad. And they do this with many different ways. One of the worst ways they do is they don't actually lie to people directly, which makes it a lot harder to catch. What they'll do is they'll tell half-truths and then partial lies, and then keep out the parts that they don't want you to ever know. For like this Kamala Harris interview, it was their own fault that they got caught. If they had not changed the answers, we probably still wouldn't know to this day. And who knows how many times they've done things like this, because what they do is they say, like, this is edited for time, right? So they'll do like a 40-minute interview or something like that, but they'll only have 20 minutes of time. And then when they go through, they just say that it's editing down the time, but it's much, much worse than that. They're actually changing and converting answers to things that people did and didn't say to try to manipulate you to come in decisions that you never would have came through. Because all the fake news, whether it be MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Political Axios, every single one of them are in the bag for the DNC. And they are very happy to lie to you, the American voters, to try to push for what they are as Team Democrat. Every single time. They all hate Trump together. They're all part of this illiberal elite establishment where you have the Democrats and the elected officials, and then you have the deep state, who are a bunch of woke activists, and then you have the fake news networks who are more than happy to be in the bag and do their bidding for them. And they create these hoaxes in a circle where the deep state will release the information, the fake news will run with it, and then the Democrats will report on it, and then the deep state gets it back, and they say, well, if the fake news is reporting it and the Democrats talking about it, then we should open up an investigation. But it was them that leaked it in the first place. You see how that circle works? And so what they're trying to do now that they've been caught through that and through like things like Russia, and the 9-bullet hoaxes, the boxes hoaxes, right? Lie after lie after lie. The fake news has lost all their influence for very good reason. And this has caused the rise of the independent creators, like here on the Cash Loren show, where we will go and we will expose them every single day like we are doing tonight. And so that they go and they pretend that they are victims, because they claim that Trump is trying to foster a fear, when it was them who were lying to you in the first place, and how he was going to attack the truth seekers. But in reality, it was the fake news who was lying to you. And the irony, when they talk about misinformation or disinformation or hate speech, it was them who were pushing all of that stuff onto the American voters. for very likely for decades. And now they're claiming that free speech is under attack. What's really happening is that they're being held accountable for their actions. And they're really mad that they can't just lie to the American people anymore and get away with it. Just like Scott Pelley here is going to blow up and pretend that he's a victim, all because 60 Minutes is being held responsible for lying to you, the American voters.
This morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak. In America, power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives.
I almost just can't take this anymore. He has the nerve to talk about false narratives. Hey, this is the same guy who ran with the CBS, the 60 Minutes, on the Russia hoax. And I want to be very clear about this. At the time that he interviewed McCabe, he knew Russia was a hoax. They all knew it was a hoax. The Mueller report had already come out. And I think that's very likely that they knew well before any of that. Yet they all hated Donald Trump together. And so they were more than happy to lie to the American voters. And they put Donald Trump's administration through 2 years of hell when they all knew he was innocent. And now he has the nerve to sit up there and pretend that journalists are under attack when it was them who was lying to the American voters. When we talk about how you will never hate these people enough, I really mean that you will never hate these people enough.
Can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
No, there's not. This is the exact same playbook that the Democrats and their friends over the fake news networks have been running forever. There's nothing new about this. They sit there and they lie to the American voters, and then when they get caught, they sit there and they pretend that they're the victims. When it was them that was lying to you, the American people, this entire time. And he has the nerve to talk about DEI, which is institutional racism, which is something that far left activists want to push on this country because they want to punish the white people. And then when they get called out and DEI starts to go away, what happens? Oh, it's under attack and they're going after inclusion. Well, yeah, you're dang right we are, because we are America. We believe in the merit system. That it doesn't matter what color your skin is, and it doesn't matter what your background is. What matters is you work hard and you earn what you keep. That's what matters. And you will never, ever hate these people enough. As MSNBC, they go and they defend Pelley, and they call him a free speech martyr. How insane are these people? If they had a single journalistic bone in their body, which they do not have one, they're all activists, then they would be talking about how he, in 60 Minutes, they lied to try to manipulate the American voters. They knew Kamala Harris was a train wreck, and they covered it up. And that's why she didn't do interviews, and that's why they did them. They would only do them pre-recorded, and then they would release them edited. And it wasn't until later on when she got more and more desperate, she fell further and further behind the polls, that she started to have to go and do more live stuff. And this is when she really started to screw up and where her campaign really tanked. But these guys are not neutral journalists, not for a single second. And this has caused, like, their news president, Wendy McCone, as she had to go and she had to step down. And then 60 Minutes producer, Bill Owens, also had to step down because they are guilty of doing all these things that they are trying to accuse us of. It's really ironic. I think that the Democrats and their friends with the fake news networks, I think every hoax that they come up with, they essentially just accuse the opposition of whatever they have done wrong, right? If the Democrats lie to you, then they accuse the opponents of lying. If fake news gets busted in a hoax, then they accuse their opponents of running a hoax. Because that is everything that he said when he's talking about how all these institutions are under attack when they're not. It was actually ironic that it was the 60 Minutes and the other fake news networks who are trying to take away free speech, who are trying to tell you that you have to trust them when they are the ones that are lying to you. It's so just astounding. And when they should never wonder why, they have no influence left. And we have the internet is having a whole bunch of fun with this ridiculous speech for him, as some of our friends over on X made it onto Fox News today.
Well, online now. Scott Pelley raged at Trump in angry, unhinged commencement address at Wake Forest as he speaks openly and freely in America. Another, his misguided address does everything to uninspire the graduates and sets a disgusting tone of apathy and doubt. And this one, commencement speeches are meant to be a joyous send-off, not a politicized rant. Michael.
But they don't look at it that way. They see themselves as the liberal elites. And they see themselves as your betters. They are high above you in their high, lofty ivory towers. They are better than you. They're smarter than you. They have Ivy League degrees. And so in their minds, it's not their job to report the news because facts get in the way of their narrative. And see, if you were just smarter like them, if you were educated like them, then you would understand that this is necessary. That for them, it is okay for them to lie to the American voters because the ends justify the means. So they go on and they do all this stuff. And it wasn't until Elon Musk purchased X that we're finally able to really expose it all. And when fake news, when they cry about free speech and they care about none of that, what they really care about is that they're the only ones that can lie to you. And what they're really raging and they're gnashing their teeth and they're very upset about is that now that they no longer have a free license to lie to you, the American people. That now that we can go and we can have a camera and we can have a microphone, and every time they lie just like they did, that we can expose them every single time. That's what they're truly angry and upset about. And this goes on to, for example, when they think that free speech is somehow their right, that essentially means free speech means that they get to lie to you and face no consequences for their actions. This goes on, for example, with Harvard. As Harvard has been busted, and now they're about to lose all their tax dollars as they have also been lying to you, the American voters. What they did is that you have these woke activist colleges, and they sit there and they recruit all these Marxist activists. And you remember all the colleges when they're being taken over by these foreign people from other countries, and you saw the tents and you saw the Palestinian flags and free Palestine. And then what were they doing? They were not allowing Jewish people to come into the colleges, even though they had every right to do that. And Harvard was at the very center of all of this. Well, of course, the Biden administration did nothing about it. It wasn't until Trump came in and he said, if you're going to take tax dollars, then you're not going to do this anymore. So he revoked their visas because they're refusing to hand over their foreign students list. And we'll be very clear about this. Okay, visas and green cards, they are not a right. They are a privilege. Just like these universities who I think should be cut off from tax dollars altogether. But even if they're not, they don't get to sit there and have these tax dollars no matter what. Okay, that is part of the hook of having tax dollars. If you're going to have tax dollars go into your college, then you're going to have to follow certain rules. If you don't want to follow those certain rules, then you don't get the tax dollars. It's really not that complicated. But these liberal elites, these activists, they think that now that they are so high above you in their ivory towers, that then they can justify anything they do and face no consequences because they are right. In their own minds, they don't think that they've done anything wrong. They never, ever doubt me on a single second on this. This is far more insane than they think they're lying to you and they know they're lying to you. They have used the lens of Marxism to convince themselves that they are right every single time. And so what Harvard relies on is all these foreign students to come here into their college. Did you know this? Because I didn't know this before I started doing research for this show. But Harvard they have over 6,800 international students. So that's roughly a third of their college is here from other countries. And they have been protecting these illegal activists, these woke ideologues, these Marxist communists that really, in the end of the day, are not compatible with our way of life. And so they go in and Donald Trump said, you know what, this is enough. And he's starting to freeze all of their money in all their visa programs. And then these activist judges are trying to stop them. But before we get into that, my clock is blinking at me. We're going to go, we're going to do this greedy profit break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to break down a lot more about that in NPR and a lot more. This is the Cash Loren Show. We have Harvard that has got themselves right in the middle of another problem as they have decided to go against America's own interests, all while they're gaining your tax dollars and then allowing this country to be invaded by people who hate this country and then trying to protect those people from our executive branch, Donald Trump and his administration. We can't even exaggerate this, that this is literally what's happening when they're bringing in all these people who go and they fly these Palestine flags. They hate this country. They go in these Ivy League universities like Harvard, and then they take over these schools and they kick the Jewish kids out. And then Harvard wants to do nothing about it. Not only do they want to do nothing about it, they then want to protect these students from being removed from this country like they should be. And then they think that they have the right, like it's somehow protected in our Constitution, that they get to have tax dollars no matter what they do. The elites on the left, they're so arrogant. You know, it just slimes off them. That they can be this just arrogant about everything that they do. That to be that, no matter how much I fail, no matter what happens, like somehow that they are entitled to your money. Yeah, that's not how this works. If places like Harvard want to truly be on their own and be independent, then fine, don't take any tax dollars. But if you're taking tax dollars, then you are subject to the rules that come with those tax dollars, such as you're going to turn over your list of foreign students, and Donald Trump has the right to revoke every single visa if he chooses. He doesn't even need a reason. Okay, understand that visas that come into this country, they are not a right. Those are a privilege that are granted by us. This is not something that they're just guaranteed to do, but they've been given this money for such a long time that they think that it's their right, just like NPR does. We're going to get in here in just a little bit too. So Donald Trump, he froze over $2.6 billion in grants. And then these activist judges who have no authority of this whatsoever, all of a sudden just decide that they can just write injunctions on anything. And this Obama judge who was appointed, they wrote an injunction, within hours of all this going into effect. Just absolutely insane that they think that they even have the right to do this. And then where's SCOTUS to shut this down? These judges, they have no right whatsoever. Okay, the foreign policy of our federal government is through Donald Trump and the executive branch alone. Just like Congress has exclusive right to write laws, and just like judges have exclusive right to settle individual cases, this is the separation of powers, meaning that not one branch rules over all the other branches. But at the same time, the Democrats are trying to argue that, well, the separation of powers means that we have to keep him in check. And so they're trying to argue somehow the sleight of hand that then judges can then write injunctions on anything. Absolutely BS. And at the end of the day, they're going to lose. They know they're going to lose, but they're trying to slow Trump down as much as they can in the meantime. They do not doubt for a second that's what this entire plan is. So what Trump is now considering is something that I think is very brilliant. And what he is planning to do is he is thinking about taking all this money, which is for like $2.5 billion or 2.5 million Americans, that he's going to take that money that goes from Harvard. He's instead going to put it into trade schools for things like electricians, for welders, for plumbers, for people that actually produce something. Not for career useless people to sit in some Ivy League degree or go to the federal government and waste your tax dollars on arguing about DEI or any of this other racist crap that they're trying to force upon you. Of how many just insane regulations do we have in this country that aren't even needed. This is the difference between useless people and useful people. To go in, right, and have a trade. And then you produce something that people use. And then that generates profit and you earn from that profit. And instead of like we're government, these career useless people, all they do is take. Right? They go, the money goes in, it's guaranteed, and then they never have to pay a price for anything that they do. Have you noticed that? Especially through the whole Biden administration, where nobody was ever fired for anything that they ever did. This is the difference between the private sector and the federal government. And all these woke Ivy League colleges, which essentially creates useless degrees. I mean, most of the time, you don't need a degree anymore. In fact, in many cases, it's better not to. Now, there are certain exceptions, right? You have doctors, accountants, dentists, where you do need training, and I can even argue a little bit about that. But for most jobs now, you're much better off going in and you just learn on the job. Like an electrician, you go to trade school, you go under a journeyman, you learn the field, and within a few years, you're making incredibly good money and you have no debt. Welders, plumbers, you name the trades. This is how it's worked for a very long time. This is what helped grow the greatest country in the world. I mean, what has the federal government produced that's made your lives better? I mean, how many of you would like to pay less taxes or virtually no taxes? As a great example, do you know that we used to have no income tax in this country? Zero. So how was the federal government then paid for? You're going to get a real kick out of this. Okay, the federal government was paid through tariffs. Wow. Just like Donald Trump is trying to bring us back to now. See, this is the brilliance of the American First movement. It's getting away from this commie left, growing the federal government, and sending all your manufacturing jobs overseas, and then lying to you about cheap goods. When you can see year after year after year, nothing actually gets cheaper. In fact, you just get more and more crap that comes over from overseas that barely works, and then American companies can't compete with the slave labor that happens overseas. So it's actually doing the harm to this country, the exact opposite that it says that it's trying to do. So you bring in Trump's administration, they then start to cut the federal government. Well, hopefully the rhinos don't get out of the way, but put all the tariffs on foreign countries, then make everything come to be built here in America and provide you with great jobs. And once you have the great jobs here, we don't need the federal government anymore. I mean, I'd love to see 80 or 90% just go away. But Harvard, they go and they lose a lot of their funding. So let's see, I believe that is it right there. Nope, that is the NPR. Okay, so I lost the slide somewhere in there. Let's get started. But as we go through and they switch us back to the manufacturing, wait for all the hoaxes. What's some of your favorites from the recent? How about where they're lying about egg hoaxes, how Trump was causing the prices of eggs to go up until they went back down, and then all of a sudden the fake news moved on. Or what about the stock market? Except all the little panicins, when the stock market recovers, all of a sudden they all disappear. And then you have all the Rhino Uniparty, the Democrats and the Republicans who pretend to be conservatives, all work together to lie about what tariffs actually do and call it a tax, but it's not a tax on you. It's not something that you just pay. See, they only tell you half the story. Because for that to work the way that it says it is, that means that we don't build anything here. That's the part that they're leaving out. But if we build it here, then there is no tariff. And you have really good paying jobs, that then we get rid of the federal government, and then you pay less in taxes. And you take even more home while you make more money. This plan will work to put America first. And we just got to beat the government, who's very incentivized to work against all of us. These people in Washington do not doubt for a second they don't want us to win. Okay, they don't want the federal government to be defunded. They don't want manufacturing to come back to this country. They want everything just to stay the way it is. They want Harvard left alone. They want them recruiting all these woke Marxist activists into our country and push all this leftist, progressive liberalism on all of you. Okay, do not doubt that for a single second. That is the entire goal of growing this beast from the abyss, this federal government that they're trying to make to rule over you. Because the Democrats and their friends in the rhinos, they see this as their way to rule over you. And they look at the Constitution as something that's in the way of their rule over you. But the one thing that happened that they never thought could happen, Donald Trump came back. And he fought and he won the presidential elections and sent them all into shocks. As these academics and all these Ivy League degrees with their fancy, career useless people that think they're better and smarter than you because they have a piece of paper on the wall, who go on and then need the government, need like these NGOs, these USAIDs, these federal employees that produce absolutely nothing but useless regulations and red tape for you to cut through. And then they try to use that authority to squeeze you and force you to bend to their will. Where all the trusty experts come from. Or how they will tell you that, the science says. When we show over and over and over again, not only were they wrong, but they were lying to you. And that's why all these experts are losing all their influence. It's because they've been blatantly lying over and over again. And this is truly sad because we don't want that to happen at all. Like it takes years of study at times to get really good at something. You practice every day. I think it's every day for an hour. To be 5 years, I believe, to be considered an expert on any one subject. And so you want to be able to trust the people who have worked so hard to achieve those skills. But when they abuse that authority, when they abuse that privilege, and then instead of just telling you the truth and using their expertise to feed you accurate information, they instead decide that they're going to say that, well, no, I'm the expert, and then lie right to your face, and they expect you then to believe them because they are the expert with the Ivy League degrees, with all the letters in front of their names. And that's why more and more people are shutting them off. That's why fake news is dying. And that's why places like Harvard, they think that they're so entitled because they sit in that little bubble. And it's unfortunate that our side doesn't want to fight back. Because if we just had more people like Trump, more who would fight, that's all we need and we would win. But these rhinos, they don't want to. They really do want to lose. They want to play second fiddle to all these Democrats. And we have a clip here where we have Elon Musk, and he's talking about how frustrated he is because he has tried to expose the government. And then all the people that should be up in arms and wanting to stop the waste and the fraud, especially when it's all going to like 99% to the left side, they're being exposed, I think, for everybody, that the ones that are on our side, the so-called Republicans, but really are rhinos, are actually Democrats. And watch the frustration on Elon Musk as he is just incredibly frustrated as he has to fight back against all the people that he shouldn't have to.
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Okay. What about...
Yeah, I really don't blame Elon Musk there for 1 second. I mean, do any of you, how frustrating is this? I mean, you voted for Donald Trump to be the executor of the federal government. And he was very open about everything he was ranting for on the economy, on deportations, and on Doge, exploring all this fraud and waste in our federal government. Such as they bring in $5 trillion a year out of your pockets. Yet the $7 trillion goes out the door. And then we're finding all kinds of insane stuff. And I think we're just scratching the surface. For example, like the Department of Treasury, $5 trillion. No idea where it went. No records at all. Gone. Poof. Where'd your tax dollars go? We start to find out like USAID is funding all these NGOs, NGO being non-government organizations, but there is nothing non-government about these organizations. They get funded by your tax dollars, and then they push these radical leftist ideologues. Like we were talking about earlier with Harvard, with all these career useless people They go into work for places like these NGOs. They get radicalized in these institutions into these far left activists. And then they use these NGOs and they use this tax money, then try to push all these progressive policies. It's really amazing that there's even a Republican Party left. I mean, you look at everything that the Democrats have going for them. Right? You have their own party, and then you have basically the whole deep state that's in their pocket. You have all these activist judges working for the Democrats. You have fake news networks. Every single network is more than happy to push for the Democrats. And then virtually every single tax dollar is going to push leftist progressive policies here in the United States and throughout the world. And yet somehow we're almost still split down the middle. It truly is amazing. If it was 50-50, I don't think there would be a Democrat Party anymore. I mean, you think all those advantages they have, and we still have the president, we still have the Senate, and we still have the House. Well, kind of. I understand Elon Musk. I would be that frustrated too. When you go and you show in like Social Security, that there's millions of people on Social Security that are over 120 years old, and they're trying to clear those rolls, and they're getting fought left and right. Or how they lie and they say that there's no illegal immigrants on Medicaid. And we think there's over like 1.4 million, I believe. And then how many times you see like the FEMA where they lied to us about that too, when they was using all your tax dollars to invade our country, to put all these illegal immigrants in hotels and to buy all these foods. And then when North Carolina, when they were hit with a hurricane, all of a sudden FEMA had no money. And you had Mayorkas and you had Biden and everybody else lying about what was happening. And the real irony in all of that was that before they were lying to you, the American people, they were on C-SPAN openly bragging about using FEMA money for illegal immigrants and asking to get FEMA money for their individual areas from the House and for Senate. It's unbelievably how blatant they were, because they never thought they were going to lose. And now they've lost, and now that we can expose it all, now they're on their back foot, and they're on their very last what they can spend on these activist judges. Hey, that's it. Once we get past these judges, they got nothing left. And it's up to us that we fight back against these activist judges and against this deep state. And our side needs to get on the ball, and they need to stop fighting Donald Trump, stop being part of the uniparty, and realize that you, the American people, this is what you want. You are the independent thinkers. You are what makes America exceptional. And when you vote for your elected officials, they've forgotten that they're supposed to go to Washington and serve you, not special interests, not lobbyists, not their own pocketbooks. And they shouldn't be finding out that trillions of dollars are being wasted and then deciding they're just going to go on another long vacation every time that they should be defending Donald Trump's administration, right? These judges should be either impeached, they should be defunded, or they should be arrested. But our side just wants to lose. And with that, I'm way over on another break. When we come back, we're going to continue to talk about how we're going up against all these other things that we're fighting, including NPR now, who thinks that they are also entitled to tax dollars, just like Harvard did. Their excuse for why they think that Donald Trump has to pay them millions of dollars will absolutely shock you. You're not going to miss that or anything else. We'll be right back after this greedy profit break. This is the Cash Loren Show. Well, speaking of the fake news networks, they're all combined together to try to help the Democrats take away your freedoms and rights. And what's truly ironic about all of this is they will go and they will lie to you about free speech when they're the ones trying to take away your voice. They're all in the Democrats' bag. I can't stress this enough. From MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Political Axios, every single one of them are Team Democrat. And this includes the NPR, as they are ran by this woke activist. And let's see if give me just a second. Let's see if I can find, because somehow everything, okay, there she is. Somehow she got out of order. But this is the person who is running NPR. And she has decided that, look at her. I mean, isn't that stunning and brave? A mask in a Biden hat. This seems like a really fair person who's going to be reasonable. Does it not? And the NPR, they get paid tax dollars, and yet they push leftist progressive ideology all the time, just like the rest of the fake news networks. There is nothing neutral or in the middle about any of them. And they have gotten away with it for such a long time that they think that they are entitled to your tax dollars no matter what they do. In fact, it is their duty. It is their right. Okay? It is their responsibility not to tell you the truth, not to give you the facts. No, see, this is about social justice. This is about equity. This is about inclusion. Okay, this is about no matter what. See, when you look at equity instead of equality, then it's all about the end results. And as long as you justify the end results, then anything you do from the beginning to the end, as long as you get to the end results, is justified. See, this is through the leftist Marxist lens, where liberalism, socialism, communism, progressivism, activism, all these different isms that all to go together, but point the same ship in the same direction. To try to silence anyone that they don't like, and to only talk about the things that they think that are important, just like the NPR has been doing. Spewing this wild, insane leftist propaganda and using your tax dollars to undermine your vote. It's funny because they are claiming now that if Donald Trump takes away their tax money, that there's somehow their First Amendment is violated. Can anyone explain how that violates your First Amendment right? I mean, how is a private companies or anyone really, how are they guaranteed tax dollars? I mean, isn't that a fair question? I sure think it is. Why should some company be guaranteed your tax dollars no matter what they do? How, they have a First Amendment right, whether they have the tax dollars or not, because they can still, compete in the free markets, just like anybody else was, just like I do, or any other creator does. You provide your show, you build up your audience, and then you live off the income that it produces. I would never take corporate money if they had any say on what I produced, right? I would sign, for example, a distribution deal, but I wouldn't sign something that turned over creative rights, because it's very important, whether you agree with me or you don't agree with my opinions, that they are my legitimate opinions. And that's the authenticity that you receive from independent creators. And that's why it's so important for us to have all these different avenues. So if you don't like what I say, for example, then you can go on to a different show and find somebody that you agree with and you don't agree with and listen to their content. I mean, I hope you stay here. I don't want you to go anywhere, obviously. But this part of this is to entertain and educate the American people. And if you find that interesting, like we have, let's see, over 11,000 people now watching the show, then great, I appreciate it. I mean, we were an hour, almost an hour and a half behind today, and there's still over 11,000. I can't thank all of you support enough. That this show will always be about you and it'll never be about me. Unlike NPR, who thinks it's their moral duty to lie to you. As Catherine Mayer said in an earlier clip, is the one that we had up on the screen, she said, I believe in her TED Talk, that the truth can sometimes get in the way of what they want you to tell you. See, the truth is the problem, just like you're the problem. When they get busted lying, when they get caught, see, they never take responsibility for their actions. And this is why we expose their propaganda over and over and over again, and why fake news is losing all their influence, and why they can't swing elections anymore. When at least there used to be people kind of sort of trusted mainstream media, but a large part of that is because they had nothing else that they could go to. Independent creators just didn't have the reach. You basically come home, you turn on cable TV, and that was the only way to reach the masses. And they blocked that out to these all wild activists. But now that we have the internet, and now we have places like X, we can go out and we can talk to you directly and share all the stories that fake news won't cover. And that's why they're so upset, because they've been busted for lying, and now they're going to lose their tax dollars for it. I mean, if NPR, if they're not going to be neutral, If they're going to go far left, then fine. But they're not entitled to your tax dollars. I can't believe they're even trying to sue here. They must be hoping to get some activist judge, but even if they do, at some point, it's going to go up the ladder. And how do you argue this to a judge? That you're guaranteed tax money because of the First Amendment? Did I miss that in the Constitution somewhere? I'll have to go back and look and see if the First Amendment says that you're guaranteed tax money. The newspapers. If I don't know, maybe it's there somewhere. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I slept through that part. It's possible, I guess. But of course it's not. Of course, being facetious, because you all know the same thing. And this is part of why they're losing, because they did all the same things in concert, just like we covered earlier, where the NPR did the exact same thing that all the other fake news did. All right, they ran with Russia for years. They knew it was fake because we can prove it because the Mueller account was already out. Yet they still ran with it, and it's still trying to affect politics today. I mean, how often do you not agree with the left? Do you get called like a Putin puppet? And they still believe their own hoax. It's incredibly wild that the Democrats, they did this to themselves. Okay, so the Democrats, they dreamed up Russia. Then they paid for the Steele dossier. Okay, fake news runs with it. The FBI opens an investigation. The Democrats say Russia when they made it up themselves. And every single one of them knew it. And they put the Trump administration through absolute hell. While at the same time, while they platformed McCabe, who was lying about Russia, and everything else, they knew it, McCabe knew it, and they didn't care. You know, you will never, ever hate these people enough. I don't know how to say it any stronger. I mean, every time you think you do, this kind of crap happens. And this lawsuit that they're trying to push really shows just how desperate they are. It's absolutely stunning that they would even try this. But here we are, and they're going to lose. They're going to lose their tax dollars, just like Harvard's going to lose their tax dollars, and a bunch of these other woke activists. When you have 99%, roughly, I'd guess, of our tax dollars pushing to all these radical, leftist, progressive ideologues and these career useless people, and then feel bad for like Elon Musk, who's just a guy who wants to build electric cars and shoot rockets up to space. But he, like Donald Trump, okay, he doesn't need any of this. He is the richest person in the world. Donald Trump is a multi-billionaire. He was a New York Democrat for most of his life, just like Elon Musk is. Well, he wouldn't consider himself a Democrat. Elon Musk was very open about being middle left, and was praised by the Democrats and doing what they claim they care about with climate change and building all these electric cars until Elon Musk backed Trump. And then all of a sudden, they don't care about the climate so much because, like everything else the Democrats do, all they care about is power. And everything else is a blatant lie based off them gaining more power over your life. That's the one thing, the only thing that they absolutely care about. So welcome to Screw Around and Find Out, because they are getting everything that they deserve now. And I hope a whole lot more. I hope that they get completely defunded. I hope that they lose every single penny. And if they want to go on the free market, then fine, go on the free market. Just like Harvard, you know what? You want to bring in all these radicals into this country? You're not going to do it with our tax dollars, and you're not going to do it with the visa program. That's the lesson that they're going to learn now. And as these judges, as they get overruled, which should be a lot faster, right? Lawsuits like this shows how desperate they are. And when this actually gives up and this gets ruled, just imagine the ramifications. Because what you're going to see, I think, happening in fake news is going to absolutely shock you when you realize how much of our tax dollars are being used to fund this stuff. We talk often right now, because it's in news a lot, the USAID going to these NGOs and then going to all these progressive policies. But wait until these federal unions. Wait till you find out what they're doing with your tax dollars. This is going to absolutely shock people to levels that you've never seen before. It's amazing how much this corruption will go back to these federal unions. and how they fund like all this fake news through subscriptions and other avenues. You're going to be shocked. We're just getting started. If you want to see the deep state, right? If you want to see the swamp, you want to see what I'm calling the beast from the abyss, the Washington, D.C., you are now going to see it more clearly than anybody has before. Because we've never had a president like Trump before. We've never had an Elon Musk. We've never had a Doge like this. You normally, superpowers, what happens is they rise up to become the superpowers, and then they crumble from the inside out. It's not very often that they get invaded from the outside, and that's how they fail. Usually, it's actually corruption on the inside that causes them to fail. And most generations do not witness what we're witnessing right now. Most will never, ever see this happen. And so strap in, enjoy it, because we're just getting started. Get involved. The silent majority is a blatant, obvious lie to try to keep people quiet who shouldn't be quiet. Because you do need to wake up. You do need to fight back and get out there. Because like Ronald Reagan said, our freedoms are never free. And if you don't fight for them, you will lose them. These woke activists, they can't let you know that what they're doing is what the woke activists, what they're doing, they're not actually in the majority. So that's why they needed to use misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech to try to lie to you, the American voters. Because the moment you realize that there's a tiny majority and most of the country thinks like you do, the entire gig is up. That's why MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Political Axios, NPR, and all the others, that's why they all toot the same horn. You know, I really like to know who's actually pushing all their strings, who's giving them all their talking points, who's telling them to be in this moment, and how we're fighting for our democracy, and how we're facing a constitutional crisis, when it's really them that are causing all of this. And these liberal elites, they're so arrogant that they never learn any better. As we have here is like Gavin Newsom, for example. He actually thinks that he's going to be president someday. He tried to make no doubt. He saw what was happening with Joe Biden, just like the rest of you did, and he tried to replace him. But the Democrats, they built their own little hole, because when they built their little DEI sinkhole, then they couldn't step over Kamala Harris. And I suspect that people like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Barack Hussein Obama, they never wanted Kamala Harris. But if they had gone over her, how bad would that have looked for their party? So now Gavin Newsom is this story real quick where Title IX protects women's sports and spaces. And California has decided to ignore Trump's order and has allowed this biological male to compete in women's sports. And they, of course, beat the snot out of women, and now is going to place for the state championship. And I really hope Trump cuts all their funding, because there is biological facts that men are bigger, stronger, and faster. That is just reality. I'm sorry if facts get in the way of your narrative, but like some say, facts do not care about your feelings. And so we must fight, and we must save women's sports, and we must save women's spaces. If we don't stand up, just like we don't stand up and fight for this country, if we don't fight for these women's sports, we don't fight for these spaces, they will be lost forever. Well, Trump is considering cutting all of their funding, and I hope he does. And I hope they try to take this up to the Supreme Court, and they try to argue why biological men should be in biological women's sports. Please, Democrats, please be on the wrong side of another 80-20 issue. And with that, we're on the very top of the hour. We're going to have to put the rest back in the stack and come back for another time. I appreciate every single one of you for watching the show. It really means a lot to me, especially when we had so many problems today and got such a late start. Yet we still have, at the time of this closing, 13,000 of you watching this show. So thank every single one of you. And before you take off, if you're enjoying this, take a moment, hit the repost button, and help us spread an American First message with your followers. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is the Cash Loren Show. Greetings, independent thinkers. We have come to a top of another hour. If you're enjoying this content, please make sure you have subscribed, turn on notifications, but most importantly, share an American First message with your friends and family so we can help fight back against the Democrats and their propagandists over at the fake news networks. Also, take a moment to consider subscribing to us on Locals at the Cash Loren Show, where for a very small amount of money every month, you'll get many additional perks, including your name at the end of videos. I could be up the screen here in just a moment, a follow and increased engagement and exclusive lists on that I use on X. That sounds interesting to you. Go over to locals.com at the Cash Loren Show, hit the subscribe button for about a cup of coffee a month, and help us stay independent and free of the fake news networks and bring you the truth every single day, just like these fine patriots have. At the end of the video, be on your screen here in just a moment.